One of the many things that stood out for me in Donna's talk about making Jesus our center is when she said that people fall in love with Jesus by surrounding themselves with good models. And of course, the best model is Jesus and our personal relationship with him. And the second best model is people who know him, love him, and emit his light. Our readings today all give witness to the fact that our center, which is God and Jesus, is the only center that lives in many people and in many places. Jesus is the one center. In our first reading from Numbers today, we hear, "The Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to Moses. Taking some of the Spirit that was on Moses, the Lord bestowed it on 70 elders. And the Spirit came to rest on them, and they prophesied." And incredibly, two men named Eldad and Medad, who were not even there when the Spirit of Moses fell upon the 70 elders, these two men weren't even there. They stayed in the camp. And even while they were in the camp, the Spirit of the Lord rested upon them, and they too were transformed and began to prophesy. And after this event, as we just heard, Joshua, who was Moses' closest aide, began to complain about the two who received the Spirit apart from the elders, apart from the others, saying to Moses, "Moses, my Lord, stop them." Right? It's kind of like saying, these non-practicing believers who stay at home, who stay at camp, who don't go to church, are not among us. What are they doing? They're not supposed to have the Spirit. They're not supposed to know God. Stop them. It's pretty ridiculous if we think about it, right? And Moses' response is incredible. He says, "Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets. Would that the Lord might bestow his Spirit on them all." And so our readings show us that everyone is called to have God at the center of their lives. For everyone in this story received a portion of Moses' Spirit. Why? Because they were part of a community. Because, as Donna said, they surrounded themselves with models of faith. They saw light emit from the face of Moses for themselves because Moses had seen God. They knew Joshua, they knew the elders, and they had the 10 Commandments and the law of Moses. So in fact, they were not disconnected. They were in community, and they were part of everything that God was doing in their midst. In the gospel today, we have a very similar story where Jesus is with his disciples, and the disciples begin to complain to him that there's some stranger out there who is not one of them, not one of the 12 disciples, and he's out there preaching in Jesus' name and casting out devils. And they say to Jesus, "Lord, you have to stop him. Who is this person? He's not one of us." And Jesus' response is amazing. He says, "Do not prevent them. Whoever is not against us is for us." These people also are doing the work of God. Very similar to our first reading. And obviously this man, who was not one of the 12 disciples, had become a disciple. For he had been transformed by having good models in his life. For he was already actively involved in ministry, and Jesus was the center of his life. How was he connected if he was not one of the 12? I guess that's the question. Well, he probably saw Jesus, probably heard him preach, probably was touched by his sermons. He probably saw healings and miracles and knew people personally who were transformed by Jesus. And he probably belonged to a community of believers. So in modern day terms, we might say he was in a connect group, he was faith sharing, he was in Bible study, he was in Alpha, he was literally watching The Chosen with the real characters of the New Testament at play right before his eyes. And so today's readings, my brothers and sisters, invite us to make Jesus our center and to lead others to him. And so may today's Eucharist help us to surround ourselves with good models of faith and faithful people. For we, through our baptism and our relationship with Jesus, are called to be witnesses, disciples, and models of faith for others.